This is 8 Minutes, a podcast helping you understand the energy and climate challenge in just a few minutes. I'm your host, Paul Schuster. The Inflation Reduction Act has unleashed a torrent of investment into domestic battery manufacturing. The Clean Energy Association expects global battery capacity to triple by 2026, led by a North American manufacturing boom that is reshaping how the global supply chain operates. Manufacturing plants, spurred by billions of dollars of incentives from the IRA, are popping up in California, Arizona, and all along the I-75 corridor from Michigan to Georgia. A remarkable renaissance is happening in the old Rust Belt and Old South that is transforming this area into the new battery belt of the United States. Let's explore this emerging manufacturing corridor and discuss how EV batteries are transforming local economies in positive ways. 8 minutes. It's how long it takes the sun's rays to hit Earth, or about how long it took Rory McIlroy to collapse at the US Open this past weekend. Ouch! Let's get it on. There is no doubt that batteries are going to play a huge role in the energy transition. But with the global supply chain going through China at the moment, it's been a focus of the Biden administration to build up a domestic supply chain that can compete. Today, China holds about 79% of the global market according to Commodity Insights. The US, only about 4.5%. Those numbers could be changing, and soon, with a wave of investments into domestic manufacturing facilities. According to S&P Global, over $63 billion in new battery projects have been announced since the passage of the IRA, many of those along the I-75 corridor between Michigan and Georgia, an area earning the affectionate nickname of the Battery Belt. Ford and CATL announced last year a new $3.5 billion project to be built in Michigan, aiming to produce 35 gigawatt hours of battery cells, enough to support around 400,000 new EVs annually. BMW and Envision AEC likewise have a $700 million investment into a new plant in South Carolina, and ONE, a newcomer to the industry having just launched in 2020, has backing from Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy Ventures and is looking at going live with a new production facility in Michigan this year. Electric estimates that total battery capacity in the U.S. is likely to increase fivefold over the next couple of years, and by an additional 86% by 2030. And while that will mean that the U.S. will still lag China by a lot, it does mean that we're catching up. Commodity Insights, for instance, estimates that the U.S. share of global battery capacity will grow from today's 4.5% to nearly 15% by the end of the decade, while China's position will drop from 79% to around 57%. And that's really coming on the back of those IRA incentives, both domestic incentives that support domestic manufacturing chains, as well as eased loan programs from the DOE that has made capital for these projects more accessible. The industry has been quick to jump on this opportunity, tapping into a geographically focused automotive supply chain that's been flourishing since the 1970s. Automotive plants across Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina have been producing auto parts for decades, diversifying from the traditional Rust Belt manufacturing that dominated the early car industry. Tennessee alone has over 900 auto parts suppliers. And those states have embraced this opportunity to reimagine their manufacturing in a clean electric vehicle world. Georgia, not Michigan, has been the biggest beneficiary of IRA-induced investments, netting over $17 billion in new manufacturing promises. That's followed by South Carolina at $9.3 billion, and then by Michigan at $8.1 billion. South Korea's SK Corporation opened a $2.6 billion factory in Georgia in early 2022, making it an early entrant into the market before the IRA incentives had even been announced. But SK now produces enough batteries to support over 300,000 vehicles and supplies parts to Volkswagen and to Ford's F-150 Lightning truck. And the SK facility employs over 3,000 people, making it one of the largest employers in the state, which has, in turn, attracted the attention of Georgia politicians, who've embraced the battery manufacturing opportunity. Governor Brian Kemp's office issued robust praise to SK and has been an adamant supporter of new construction in the region. There are good reasons as to why the battery belt is experiencing such a boom. For one thing, the region has benefited from their close ties to the automotive industry for decades. The workforce is highly skilled and very capable across a number of these activities. And many of the states have embraced more lenient union regulations. Tennessee, for instance, operates with a right to work law that indicates that if a worker does not wish to be a part of a union, they don't have to be, and aren't forced to pay fees as a consequence. The result has been a bit controversial, as many new automotive manufacturing jobs are being added, but maybe at the expense of union participation. This was a core element of the negotiations last year between the UAW and the big three automakers, and a theme that will continue as the market shifts even more towards electric vehicles. The other thing going for these new battery investments is a semi-dormant lithium mining industry in the area. Canary Media recently had an excellent article on the revitalization of a series of mines west of Charlotte, North Carolina, that at one point had supplied lithium to the defense industry. Today, these mines have been semi-abandoned, but investment from federal and state agencies aim to reopen and re-energize these activities. The lithium produced from the mines won't meet all the needs for the burgeoning local requirements, but it will provide a needed local diversified supply source that makes manufacturing investment a bit more tenable. Not every southern state has embraced the new manufacturing opportunity. Whereas Georgia has actively recruited new economic development into their state, Virginia has gone the opposite direction. The Ford battery plant I mentioned earlier was originally slated to be built in Virginia, only to have the newly elected Youngkin administration pull the plug on it due to concerns over Ford's partner CATL. That company is a Chinese organization, and Virginia felt uncomfortable with what they thought may be undue Chinese control over the facility. The result ended up in the $3.5 billion in investment and the 2,500 jobs that came along with it, shifting to Michigan instead. Virginia, as of last year, only had a single new lithium-ion manufacturing facility planned in the state. The emerging battery belt of the U.S. is poised to be one of the big success stories coming from the IRA. The shift in manufacturing identity is creating investment, jobs, and an EV supply chain that can support the broader electric automotive market well into the future. I'm Paul Schuster, and this has been your 8 Minutes.